Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Welcome in to the GSMC Football Podcast, right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Brice Lewis, back at it again, talking about all things NFL and college, as we have news from both landscapes we're talking about here today. Obviously, we gotta talk about, just week 2 coming up in the NFL season. Obviously, talking about all the games, giving my thoughts and predictions on every game this week. Obviously previewing the Thursday night game at the end of the show. Obviously, this was recorded Thursday before the game, so this is more, if you could take it more as a prediction at the end of the show, and why I choose my prediction. But everything else will be more towards the future. We're also going to talk about college football. Obviously, big news coming out that the Big Ten has decided to resume football activities in October. So obviously, we're going to talk about that also later in the show as well. And so, obviously, a lot of big news coming out around football. Obviously, it's great to have football back. It's great for me to have content to give to you guys, and we can just dive right in and get on to it. So, I'm just going to start off the show. Honestly, we're going to do rapid-fire news, just talking about different things that's happening around the NFL landscape, injuries, contract extensions, things like that with players and teams, and we're going to go through there before I go in my next segment and talking about predictions for week 2. So, obviously... So let's go ahead, dive in. So, Robert Woods, the number 1 receiver, technically for the Los Angeles Rams. And the Rams are working towards a contract extension, says Sean McVay. Obviously, that's big news for the Rams. Like I said, he's been one of the most consistent receivers with Cooper Kupp when he came back from his injury. And, listen. McVay's excited to keep him. Obviously, he knows Robert Woods is a guy who can do a lot of different things for the receiving core. Nobody looks at Robert Woods as maybe a true number 1, but definitely a good receiver, a good number 2 for sure on top of that. And this basically is big for them. And I'm going to read you the quote that Sean McVay said about working on that contract extension with Robert Woods. And I quote, "We want to get him extended too. He's a huge part of what we're doing. That's something I think is definitely important. You absolutely talk to your players about that. Robert and Cooper have been pillars of what we've done the last few years. It's great to get Cooper under contract. I'm so happy for him, and you can see something similar down the line very shortly we're working towards for Robert." So obviously, like I said, Woods, he's been the guy who kind of hasn't been talked about. He's been kind of overshadowed by Kupp, Goff, and Gurley, and Brandon Cooks, but he's always been a steady wide receiver, very steady product for them. He's reached over 1,000 yards the last 2 seasons as well, and people don't talk about it. In this past game against the Dallas Cowboys in opening week, he had 6 catches for 105 yards. So clearly, he can play, and he's only 28 years old. It feels like Robert Woods has been in the league for a long time, but, he's been a very steady guy. He's been steady, he's played well, he's been reliable, he's been durable for the most part. Robert Woods has always been a very good receiver, and, he's one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL, in my opinion. Nobody, like I said, never really talks about him, and, it's kind of a shame because of what he has done for the organization on multiple occasions. So, obviously, with him and Kupp, they still make a dynamic duo in the receiving corps for the Rams, and obviously, Jared Goff has been very thankful to have him there as well for as long as they've been. As we're getting into some injury news, Sean Lee, obviously we know Van Der Esch obviously has a broken collarbone and will be out for about 8 weeks. Well, the other linebacker, other guy that has been a big part of the Dallas Cowboys defense for years, Sean Lee, is expected to miss 6 weeks after surgery on a hernia. Obviously, he didn't play in the Week 1 game against the Rams, and now he's going to miss 6 weeks after surgery on the hernia. So that's a big blow to the Cowboys, losing 2 of their top linebackers in just a short amount of time to both neck injuries for the most part. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Sean Lee obviously is getting up there in age, but he still played well. Last year was the first year he appeared in all 16 games. Obviously, Sean Lee has had a stigma that he's not someone who can stay healthy, but he's always been very effective while he's been playing. Obviously, he's just a great third linebacker to have. To me, he's like the Thomas Davis of the Cowboys defense when he's out there with Vander Esch and Jalen Smith. So, obviously, that's a big loss, like I said, to lose Sean Lee. The Dallas Cowboys may have some depth issues when it comes to the linebacking core with an already suspect defense. So, we're going to have to see, as they obviously have the tough challenge coming up this week against the Atlanta Falcons and their high-powered offense. We'll have to see what happens with Sean Lee being out. Richard Sherman as well, going on the IR, short-term IR with a calf injury. Obviously, he just needs a few weeks of rest and rehab. And with the IR designation that they have, the short term, he'll be out for a minimum of 3 weeks. So we won't see Richard Sherman for 3 weeks. Obviously, he's the San Francisco 49ers star corner. Obviously, they're going to have to, really be able to mend the fences on the secondary. Communication has to be top peak while he's gone. The 32-year-old remains one of the top cornerbacks in the game as well. So obviously, it's going to be interesting because you really do see a lot of teams using that short-term IR. It's not like teams are, doing because before IR was because IR basically gives you the ability to sign someone to the roster and not, because you took that player technically is not counted while he's on IR. But obviously, 3 weeks, they got to hold it down for 3 weeks. Maybe they can plug in a player at corner, or maybe they can use it, try to sign some depth at another position. Maybe call somebody up from the practice squad. So I'm sure the San Francisco 49ers corner is going to, it's 3 weeks. It's not that long, but I think he should be back pretty soon. So obviously we'll see how the San Francisco 49ers secondary handles not having their leader moving forward. Obviously, also some big news coming from Cleveland. There have been discussions that the Browns are actively looking and are allowing Odell Beckham to seek a trade. But now there's also conflicting rumors that the Browns are not actively shopping Odell Beckham. Obviously, since he's been there in Cleveland, his connection with Baker Mayfield has not been the best. So now people are wondering if Odell just doesn't work and fit in Cleveland. And so there's always been a lot of questions surrounded by why would the Cleveland Browns trade him. And so these reports are very just back and forth. You don't know if they would trade him or not. You don't really have a firm, commitment from anybody. The Browns are going to say they're not, but obviously it's something that's crazy. And listen, Odell has gone through a very tough 2-3 years, I would think, of his career right now, still struggling to really match the expectations that were set after his rookie year. And, just not being in what he feels like are good situations. Now, the one thing was we haven't heard a lot from Beckham during these 2 years in Cleveland, so we don't know if he's unhappy there or not. But you would definitely think he would be frustrated by his lack of production, sometimes lack of throws, targets, and things like that. Obviously, some people wonder if he's going to have one of those arguments that he had last year with former head coach Freddie Kitchens. And so it's going to be interesting to see. He was targeted a game-high 10 times in the Browns' defeat against the Baltimore Ravens, but only had 3 catches for 22 yards. And obviously that lack of production, people feel like is one of the reasons why they may look to get rid of him, because maybe he doesn't fit what they're trying to do. Now, obviously, Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski gave him confidence, saying that he thinks Beckham is confident and that him and Baker would get on the same page. And obviously that's going to be big because, remember, the Browns right now are hitting a crucial season. And we've been putting all this news about Baker and Baker's last year and how he struggled, but this is also big for Odell. Odell has to play well because we don't know who his trade value could go down because of this. So now if Cleveland wants to trade him, they can't expect a team to send over a lot of draft picks unless they're desperate for Odell Beckham. Which obviously I feel like always makes it dangerous because I always say that means that those New England Patriots can sneak in there because they're the master of giving up a 5th round pick and a gallon of water, and then somehow the team just says, all right, we'll take it. and you're just sitting there like. But it's very interesting to me. We'll have to see, like I said, what happens and what they decide to do. But I think they shouldn't trade Odell. I think it's too soon to trade Odell. I feel like you got to give it at least 3-4 more weeks. If it seems like the connection is not getting better and Odell's getting frustrated, then I might look into maybe trying to make a trade for Odell Beckham or, trying to get, take him off the team. I'm sure there's someone who feels like we can bring Odell here and we think he can have a good connection with whoever our quarterback is. I think a dark horse team maybe potentially could be maybe a Seattle Seahawks potentially. Imagine Russell and Odell. I mean, I think that would be a great combination with him and Tyler Lockett, one of the best slot receivers. You got DK Metcalf. I mean, Seattle could have a very explosive offense if they were able to go after Odell. So that's just a team I can throw out there to you potentially that could go after Odell Beckham. So obviously we'll have to see what happens. But obviously if they start to win as well, then maybe we'll see some changes. We'll see some different things happening. So we'll have to see. Obviously, Michael Thomas was injured in Sunday's win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Late in the game, he had his ankle rolled up on. And now there are conflicting sides in New Orleans about his availability. So apparently the Saints want to put him on short-term IR and don't play him in the Monday night game. Michael Thomas, though, believes he can play on Monday night, and he has opposed the idea of going on short-term IR. I don't think this might cause dissension within the ranks, but it's interesting to see that the player feels like, hey, I can go, but the Saints are like, we might want to put you on IR. Because it's interesting, because I would feel like if he could play, even if he couldn't play in the Monday night game, but he could play the next week, why would you put him on IR? Now, I can understand maybe they feel like we want to give him enough time to get fully recovered. In 3 weeks, he should be like 100%. Because obviously, it's very, ankle injuries are very, conflicting injuries. Because it's like, it can get to a good spot, and then you can re-injure it, and now it's bad again. You could twist it. You can step wrong. It can get hurt again. And now it's one of those injuries that can linger throughout the season if you feel like you don't get the player enough rest. And I think maybe that's why the Saints are trying to go ahead and just maybe put him on the IR for 3 weeks to go ahead, get him ready to go. I mean, I believe Sean Payton probably believes they can still win and be able to be successful without him. And so, obviously, that's something that we'll have to see if Michael Thomas is going to be okay with. Because obviously, like I said, could cause potential dissension in the ranks between New Orleans and Michael Thomas, but I don't think it will. I don't think he'll actually sit there if somehow they put him on IR and he's just going to sit here and say, okay, I don't want to play for the Saints no more. I don't think that's in danger at all. I just think that there's just a small disagreement on his availability for Monday Night Football. And so we'll have to see how it all works out. And then the last story before we get out of here, Allen Robinson, there's been conflicting rumors, obviously not happy with contract negotiations in Chicago. People wondering if he wants out with a trade. There was reports that he wanted to trade, but his agent and him come out saying, I don't want to trade, and I'm happy in Chicago. So, obviously, he's been like one of their best, if not their best receiver in Chicago for the last couple of years. And I think they definitely should try to get him under contract and get him locked up, and they shouldn't let this lingering. So, hopefully they can get that all worked out with Allen Robinson because he's a very important part of what they do there, and he definitely is someone that, can help that offense still be a good offense because he's the best receiver, an underrated receiver in the NFL. But coming up next, we're going to get into my Week 2 predictions. We're going to talk about all the games right here on the podcast, so stay tuned if you want to know all my predictions. Probably going to get through most of the 1 o'clock games, and then maybe in the third segment of the show, we might get into the 4:20 primetime Monday night game and all that. So stay tuned. Listen up, sports bettors. This is your man Brice here to tell you about my favorite sports book, and that's BetUS. Football, basketball, and baseball are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. I only endorse one sports book, and that is BetUS.com. Why, you ask? BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the biz. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid. You need a sports book that offers everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, entertainment, and all kinds of crazy prop bets and futures. Nobody in the industry gives bigger bonuses than BetUS. Go to betus.com now and fill out your information. It only takes a minute. When you get to the "How did you hear about us" box, type in "My name Brice" or "GSMC Basketball Podcast," and you can get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody beats that. I bet at BetUS, and so should you. Join BetUS today, and don't forget to type in my name or the show name, GSMC Basketball, to get up to 150% bonus on your first deposit. That's betus.com.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, we basically did a rapid-fire Week 2 news update on things that happened from last week's games and this week's games, and some news and rumors around the NFL. Obviously, we know we do here. I like to try to give you guys update on everything happening around the NFL as much as possible, obviously, because obviously injuries, contract negotiations, trade rumors are all a part of it, and obviously I just did a little quick rapid-fire, my quick thoughts and opinions on what's going on in the games here on the podcast. So now we're going to get into my Week 2 predictions. We're going to break down games quickly. And I'll give you who wins my games coming out of Week 1 games. Obviously, we kind of have an idea of what some teams are doing, who's in a crucial situation, who needs to step up, etc., etc. So obviously that's going to be very important here on the podcast to talk about. And we're just going to have to see and hope for the best, really, for the most part. So let's go ahead and jump right into it right now. So first game, 1 o'clock. AFC East matchup. The Buffalo Bills versus the Miami Dolphins. Miami lost their first game to Cam Newton and the Patriots last week, and the Bills beat Adam Gase and the Jets. Obviously, this is a game that actually has very big ramifications potentially for Miami. Obviously, Ryan Fitzpatrick did not have a good game last week, threw 3 picks and no touchdowns. Obviously, people were wondering would that even be enough to make Brian Flores think about going to Tua, but he says he will be the starter, and everybody pretty much agrees he should remain the starter. But what if he struggles again? What if he has another 0-3 game potentially? Because, Fitzpatrick has been benched before in the past because his turnover troubles can get him in trouble. Now, I don't think they would turn to Tua in this game unless he got hurt. But I definitely do think potentially that you're in a situation where if Ryan Fitzpatrick does not play better soon and Miami continues to lose, I'm sure Brian Flores is going to need a spark, and he may have to turn to the rookie quarterback sooner than maybe he wants to. Obviously, everybody's anticipating Tua coming. Obviously, also is in Miami this week, and don't forget, Miami is one of the few teams, or one of the 5 or 6 teams, I believe, in the NFL who have fans. So there will be fans at Hard Rock Stadium. So it'll be interesting to see how that is. And obviously, Buffalo coming off a good win against the Jets last week. Stephon Diggs had a great start to his debut with Josh Allen. Obviously, the Bills looking very good on both sides of the ball. Obviously, they're the AFC East favorites. So if they continue to play like that, Miami could be in trouble. In this game, I think I'm going to go with the Bills here to win. Go 2-0 on the season and put the Dolphins at 0-2. Next week, they play the Jacksonville Jaguars on Thursday night. So you might hear some Tua rumors, as some people may look at that as an ideal place to start Tua if the Miami struggles in this game. And then a big clash, America's Game of the Week on Fox. Falcons and Cowboys, 1 o'clock game at Dallas. Obviously, this is going to be a big game for both teams. On the Falcons side, Dan Quinn needs to win this game to lower chatter about him getting fired and also getting this team on the right track. Obviously, after that disappointing defensive performance, especially last week against Seattle Seahawks, the Falcons are looking to rebound and hopefully have a better performance this week. The Cowboys losing to the Rams in week 1. Obviously, now with the expectations they have, a lot of people saying they're going to win the NFC East. A lot of people saying they're Super Bowl contenders. If they go down 0-2, Cowboy fans, they're going to get into hysteria about that. And now people are going to wonder, okay, are the Cowboys going to be any good this year? You have all these guys. You got CeeDee Lamb and all these guys you signed, Alden Smith and Amari Cooper, Dak, Zeke, and you're 0-2. It would not be a good look for the Cowboys and make a lot of people question the hiring of Mike McCarthy. Both teams, like I said, are coming into this game trying to rebound from their week 1 losses. And listen, both teams have very suspect defenses, so we could see a high-scoring matchup. Obviously, we forget the Falcons had 3 receivers go over 100 yards in the receiving game last year, so they can throw the rock, and Julio's one of the best receivers in the league. Cowboys, obviously, as well, didn't score a lot of points, only scored 17, but Zeke looked like old Zeke last week. He was running the ball physically, and it looked like if he runs like that, they should have a very good running game. It's just a matter of Dak hooking up with his receivers and making plays over the top. In this game, I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons to win, not because they're my team, but because I think they're going to bounce back and beat the Cowboys. Plus, also, I love seeing the Cowboy fans be up in shambles over their team losing. But I definitely think it's going to be a close game. So, obviously, I think the Cowboys could also easily win this game as well. But I think I'm going to go with the Falcons here to win this game and go to 1-1 on the season and silence the chatters with Dan Quinn, at least just for 1 week. In the next game, we have the 49ers and Jets. Both teams lost their debut. Obviously, the 49ers lost to the Arizona Cardinals. In week 1, Kyler Murray having a big game that game. And also the Jets losing. And honestly, in this game, I fully expect the 49ers to dominate this game. The Jets, honestly, could be the worst team in the NFL this year. They did not look good at all last week against Buffalo. Darnold struggled. The offensive line's still a wreck. They don't have a lot of weapons. Defensively, they're not the same because they lost 2 of their best players. One to opt out and 1 to trade. Honestly, I don't even think Gates might even make it to Thanksgiving, and I think this is going to be another game where, honestly, I would not be surprised if this game potentially got ugly. I really would not be shocked if this game got ugly because I just think the 49ers are that much better, and I think they're going to dominate on the front line, and I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to bounce back this week, and the 49ers are going to get back on the running attack and really pound and ground the New York Jets, as I think the 49ers are going to pick up the win here. Next game, Broncos and Steelers. Obviously, Broncos coming off a Monday Night Football loss on a last-minute field goal to the Titans. Pittsburgh also playing on Monday night last week, winning in a very impressive performance against the New York Giants. Ben Roethlisberger looking really good last week, and their young receivers really standing out. Juju looked good. James Washington looked good. They have a lot of guys on that team that I think Ben Roethlisberger is gaining trust in. So, obviously, that's big moving forward. And so, to me, we're going to have to see how it all looks at the end of the day. In this game, I think, obviously, Pittsburgh's defense last week really impressed me. They look like they're going to be another top 5 defense in the NFL. And obviously, Drew Lock played decent in his first start of this season, but wasn't spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. And going against this top-flight Steelers defense, there may be another week where it might be on Drew Lock. Because remember, they shut down Saquon Barkley last week, only held him to 6 yards on 15 carries. And Melvin Gordon, has to be the main back with Philip Lindsay nursing a turf toe injury. So, to me, it's going to be very interesting to see how everything kind of looks going forward. But I definitely think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to come into this game and win the ball game. I think Ben Roethlisberger is going to continue his success and getting back into the flow of things from that elbow injury. And I think the Steelers defense might dominate this game, potentially against the Denver Broncos. But so I'm going with Pittsburgh to win the ball game. Then we have Giants and Bears. Obviously, the Bears coming back from a great fourth quarter last week against the Detroit Lions. Mitchell Trubisky throwing 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. And the Giants coming off of a disappointing Monday Night Football loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, in the game, I feel like the Giants had some things that went well. I think Daniel Jones didn't play terrible, but he did have some key turnovers. Obviously, the Bears trying to continue their momentum here, trying to maybe potentially be a team that could shock people in the NFC North this year. Obviously, a lot of people didn't expect a lot out of them, but they're in great position to go 2-0, and I think I'm going to go with them going 2-0 here. I think they're going to go ahead and pick up the win against the New York Football Giants, and I think that it's going to be a close game, though, in my opinion. I think both teams are going to go out there and try their best. This is at Soldier Field, so I think the Bears are trying to definitely win their home opener, obviously with no fans, but still trying to win the home opener and be successful. And so we're going to have to see how it all looks, I think, when it gets down to it. But yeah, so I'm definitely going with the Bears to win, go 2-0 in the season. And I think Mitchell Trubisky might still end up having another good game. Because obviously, if he continues to play well, if he continues to, lead this team and win some games, maybe it's not it for Mitchell Trubisky. Maybe it's not over for him. Maybe he still, can make it in the league and play, So, because I know a lot of people, obviously, most of football fans, and even people within the Bears organization is probably down on Big Mitch. Next game, Jaguars and Titans. The battle of two 1-0 teams as Jacksonville won in a very impressive game against the Colts last week. Gardner Minshew with 19 of 20 and 3 touchdowns last week, playing great in his first start of the season. And obviously the Titans, like I said, coming off a game-winning kick in the Monday Night Football game against the Broncos. This is going to be a very interesting game to me because, the Titans are a team that might not have A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown might not play in this game. So they're going to lose a key guy. Obviously, they still have King Henry. And Jacksonville's going to obviously game plan to stop him. But I think if Gardner Minshew plays as efficiently as he did last week, he might be able to make and cause Tennessee some problems in this game. And that would not bode well for the Tennessee Titans. And like I said, I'm if you know me, I'm a big fan of Gardner Minshew. I said I thought like maybe he was set up to fail this season based off the talent they had actively on the team. And now, where he played, if he continues to play like that and shows his improvement, Jacksonville might win a little bit more games than you expect. And I actually think they're going to actually win this game against the Titans. It'll be a close game, but I think Gardner Minshew is going to have another good game. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to have a good game too. And I think just maybe Jacksonville's going to win on a game-winning field goal potentially. So I'm going to go with the Jaguars to win their game against the Titans. Next game, Lions and Packers. Obviously, Packers coming into this game, coming off of just a dominant performance against the Minnesota Vikings. Offensively, they look fantastic. Rodgers looked great. And then the Lions losing the game they lost last week, having that kind of lead in the fourth quarter and losing it to the Bears like they did. And then the way they also could have won the game, but then it was dropped. It just seems like the choice is just always going to be cursed. And I don't think anything's going to change this week. I expect Green Bay to come in there and completely put a wallop on the Detroit Lions. But I must say, last year when they did play the Packers, there were 2 very competitive games. And so the Lions may have a certain game plan or their personnel may fit against the Green Bay Packers personnel a little bit better than we think. Obviously, I'm making this prediction based off what I saw last week. But if this game is close, I would not be surprised at all. Obviously, Matthew Stafford and DeAndre Swift are going to need some bounce-back performances in this game. And the defense is going to have to step up if you're going to go against Rodgers and this offense as good as they play last week. So I'm sure they're definitely going to have to be in a lot of defensive meetings this week trying to figure out how can we control Rodgers and not let him beat us like he beat the Minnesota Vikings defense last week. And then we have Panthers and Buccaneers also. So this is going to be a very interesting game. Obviously, a lot of people were making a lot of big hay about what happened with Tom Brady last week into the game against the Saints. Obviously not playing one of his best games of the season. Obviously, it's the first week, new team, only had a month of training camp. We should expect some slow starts. The Panthers obviously coming off a very explosive offensive game against the Raiders, but a very questionable call to not give the ball to Christian McCaffrey at the end of the game has caused some criticism towards head coach Matt Rule. So now they're both going to come into this game 0-1 looking for their first win in the season. I think Tampa Bay is going to get back on track this week. I think they're going to win the ball game. But I definitely think it'll be competitive because, listen, yes, the Raiders' defense may not be that good, but I think the Panthers do have some offensive talent. And so I definitely think they're going to be able to put some points up on the Tampa Bay defense in this game. So Brady's going to have to score a little bit, and I think he will. I think he's going to play, like I said, better in his second week. Obviously, a lot of people made a big deal about the criticism that he got from Bruce Arians. Obviously talking about his performance in last week's game and thinking, will he take that the wrong way? Is he rubbed the wrong way by those comments? So, to me, I think it's just going to be very interesting to see how it all kind of looks out and how it all turns out to me. We'll have to see if things, continue to work out going into the future, but I don't think it's something that we should make too much of a big deal about. I just think Bruce Arians has always been a tough-minded coach, and he just wants the best out of his players. And he wants Brady to know, listen, you didn't play great, and you need to play better. But at the same time, Bruce Arians also came out this week and said, I think he will play better. And against, like I said, that Carolina defense that does have some issues, it's kind of a great week, I think, for him to get back on track, get in a rhythm with his receivers and really just, find that chemistry on the offense that they need and figure out what they do and don't do well and then execute it this week against the Carolina Panthers. But I am going with Tampa Bay to go to 1-1 on the season and the Panthers to go to 0-2. So we're going to stop it right there with my predictions. We're going to continue my predictions next here on the GSMC Football Podcast. So stay tuned for more of my Week 2 predictions right here on the podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, we were talking about my Week 2 predictions on games happening around the NFL this next week. And now we're going to go ahead and continue with those predictions here on the podcast. Going to finish them out in this segment. And we're going to talk about now the next game, the Rams and the Eagles. Obviously, the Rams coming off an impressive win against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. And the Eagles coming off a very, some would say, shocking loss to the Washington Redskins. Or, sorry, my bad. The Washington football team. My bad. And the reason why I think the Eagles are in big trouble, they lost 3 offensive starters on the offensive line. Remember, last year it was skill position players. Their skilled position players were decimated. The offensive line, outside of maybe 1 or 2 players, for the most part was there. But skill position players, they were decimated. Now it's their D and O lines that are decimated. And obviously, to win games to me in this league, you got to have a good line of scrimmage. And the Rams, don't forget, they have one of the best pound-for-pound defensive linemen in the league in Aaron Donald and other guys. So this could be another long day for Carson Wentz because he was sacked 8 times last week by Washington. I think the Rams are going to at least get half of that this week. If the Eagles continue to struggle to protect Carson Wentz, you could get him hurt again, obviously. And also, the Eagles might take a turn for the worse this season, potentially, with that. So they have to get their offensive line woes straight. Hopefully they can. The Rams, obviously, are just looking to be on track. Like I said, the Rams feel like they're going to be the team they were 2 years ago, not last year, having a strong running attack with 3 running backs, Malcolm Brown, Cam Akers, and Henderson. Obviously, Jared Goff, in their screen game, going to screens to Robert Woods and Coop and Tyler Higbee. This Rams team definitely is a team that might be able to get back into the playoffs again this year if they continue to play that way. And I think they're going to pick up the win this Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles. Like I said, the Philadelphia Eagles could be in potential big trouble because of the injuries on the offense and defensive lines. And the line of scrimmage is where you win and lose a lot of games in this league. And the next game, Vikings and Colts. Obviously, this game, again, teams coming off losses in their week 1 matchups. Obviously, both teams did not play as well defensively as they would have liked by last week. Now they're going against each other. Phillip Rivers, Kirk Cousins. Question I have is, who do you trust more in this game? Do you trust Kirk Cousins or do you trust Phillip Rivers? Obviously, I feel like both guys can be turnover prone, but at the same time can make plays. And honestly, it's just a matter to me of, first, who can run the ball the best. Because obviously Minnesota has one of the best running backs in the league in Dalvin Cook. And the Colts may have an up-and-coming running back in Jonathan Taylor, who's taking over full-time for the injured Marlon Mack, who tore his Achilles last week. Now, in saying that, they do have Hines also going to get some snaps too, but obviously a lot of people are expecting Jonathan Taylor to take over and like I said, Dalvin Cook on the other side. In this game, I think it's just going to come down to which quarterback doesn't make the most mistakes in this game. And if I had to make a prediction, I think Minnesota's going to bounce back and go to 1-1. But it could really go either way to me. This game is a coin flip to me. I just think the Vikings are just going to make more plays down the stretch. And obviously, I think the Vikings need to do a better job of getting Kirk Cousins in rhythm this week, because you can't be having him throw for single digit like 5-6 times in the first half and expect him to be, ready and able to win, because Kirk Cousins is one of those guys who needs to get into a rhythm when he plays the game, and Minnesota sometimes is so, cautious about putting the ball in his hands that they actually still end up hurting themselves and him by doing that. But I am going to go with the Minnesota Vikings to win this game against the Colts and go to 1-1 on the season. Then we have a game that has a lot of people's intrigue. The Washington football team versus the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, Washington's defense looks like they could be potentially a great defense this year for Ron Rivera. It could keep Washington in a lot of games. Obviously, the Cardinals came off a very impressive win last week over the 49ers, who obviously is expected to have a great defense. Struggled early, but DeAndre Hopkins had a big game. Obviously, you see that him and Kyler Murray immediately have chemistry, as he went to him many times in that game. And Kyler Murray looks like he could potentially grow into a very special player this year as well. And if he could do something against this Washington defense, that's going to be big. Obviously, Dwayne Haskins, we have to talk about Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins did not play bad last week. I believe Dwayne Haskins played better than a lot of people thought he would play. And like I said, he didn't put up anything monster numbers. He didn't do anything crazy. But he made some good throws, and he didn't turn the ball over. Remember, one of his biggest issues last year is he would turn the ball over a lot, and that would always put Washington behind. If he can still play some clean football and just make the throws when they're there, and also you can obviously tell Washington's a run-first football team, this is going to be very, very, very interesting. And honestly, I think that the Cardinals are going to win this game. But like I said, this game could really go either way to me. Both teams, the matchup with the Cardinals offense versus that Washington defense is the must-see for me. But we got to give a shout-out to the Cardinals defense as well. They played very well against the 49ers. Now, we may not look at the 49ers as some dynamic team because, they got Jimmy G and yeah. But remember, they are supposed to have one of the best ground attacks in the NFL, and for the most part, they were able to limit the 49ers, and that's obviously something you have to commend because, the 49ers were able to average like almost 30 points a game with that offense last year, and Cardinals were able to keep it under control, and Kyler Murray was able to make enough plays late. Then we have Chiefs and Chargers, an AFC West matchup. So, this game to me, I think, seems very easy to pick based off the way the Chargers played. Obviously, we know who Tyrod Taylor is. He is not a guy who you really want in a shootout because he's not going to take chances, throw a bunch of deep bombs, and just go 4 touchdowns, 400 yards. And going against the Chiefs team with the offense they have, listen, the Chargers barely beat. And some people may have felt like if they didn't call that penalty against Adrian, would have lost to the Cincinnati Bengals last week. So to sit here and to say, if you trust the Chargers to go over 30 points, I don't see it. That's why they're big underdogs this week. They're 8.5 underdogs this week. So, obviously, I think the Chiefs are going to continue their success on the offensive end. I think they're going to continue to play well on the offensive end. But the big thing here is what can this Chiefs offense do against this Chargers defense? Obviously, this Chargers defense is supposed to be the strength of the Chiefs. I mean, not the Chiefs, but the strength of the Chargers. And they're going to have to really play one of their better games, which I feel like every defense has to play one of their better games against the Chiefs to maybe potentially stay in the game. But obviously, this is, like I said, an AFC West matchup. Both teams know each other. Both teams know what the other person can do. And I'm sure they're aware of what they are coming into in this game. And they know they have to play well to be able to beat a team like this. But I think the Chiefs are going to win this game by a couple of touchdowns and go to 2-0 on the season as they continue their Super Bowl defense this season. Then, we have Ravens and Texans. Obviously, Texans coming off a very, very disappointing performance last week on Thursday Night Football against the defending champion Chiefs. Offensively, they look completely out of sync, but they had one good shining light of their offense. Obviously, Deshaun Watson played well, so that's not what I mean. But David Johnson seemed like he might have returned slightly to his 18 form or 17 form, where he had one of his best seasons as a running back. He played very well for them last week. Really, what was shocking about the Texans was just they couldn't get their passing game going. I want to say that was what the issue was. They could not get their passing game going, and I think that's what really messed things up for them. And so they have to get that going. If they can get it going, they have to score to beat Baltimore. You know Lamar Jackson, that offense can put up points. And remember, that Texans defense isn't the greatest defense in the world. The Ravens are probably going to score north of 25. So if the Texans want to be competitive, they have to score points. You just went against one of the best offenses the NFL has to offer last week, and it wasn't a great performance. Now you're going against one of the best offenses, some people may consider it the second best offense in the league. How are you going to come back? And like I said, this season could really put Bill O'Brien on the hot seat, because start the season off 0-2, making that trade to get rid of DeAndre Hopkins, and if the offense continues to struggle, it's not going to look good. And like I said, on the Baltimore side of things, Lamar Jackson, we know what he can do. If he continues to play well, you know, people are going to say he's going to probably be back in the race for MVP again. So, you know, I expect Lamar to continue to have a big game. Then we have, in the Sunday night game, Patriots and Seahawks. Cam Newton versus Russell Wilson. If you remember all the games they played in Carolina, they were always very sloppy defensive games. Came down to the last seconds and minutes. Who's going to make the final play? Who's going to make the drive? And obviously, the Patriots have an offense now that fits Cam's skill set, a very grinded-out, run-heavy offense with some throws. And they're going against a Seattle team who obviously had their way with the Atlanta Falcons defense last week, especially through the air. Russell Wilson was almost perfect. Going against this Patriots defense, obviously, they had a good performance against the Miami Dolphins, but this isn't the Miami Dolphins. This is going to be a very interesting matchup. This will be in Seattle. Obviously, the 12th man won't be there, clearly, because of COVID-19 restrictions. But the Seattle Seahawks, obviously with Jamal Adams and them playing well last week, this game is going to be a very interesting, because it's kind of a contrast of styles. And you have two good coaches. And this could either be a very ugly game to me, like the games that Cam and Russell are used to playing against each other. Or this could, to me, be a blowout for Seattle. I don't see a situation where the Patriots come in here and blow out the Seattle Seahawks unless their defense just comes out here and plays lights out and Cam makes a lot of plays. But I think this game might lean more towards an uglier game, like a 20-23 game, than a 31-28 game. So, because I don't think that's the way the Patriots offense is built to be able to score in those numbers in the first place. So, we'll have to see if they can make something, but I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks to win this game and go 2-0 on the season. And then we have Saints and Raiders. Obviously, the Saints coming into this game, coming off that great impressive win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady. Obviously, we talked about in the first segment, we don't know if Michael Thomas is going to play. Obviously, that would be a big blow for them, but they still have some weapons. They still have Alvin Kamara and Sean Payton, the offensive guru, and Drew Brees. Obviously, on the Raiders side, coming off their first win last week, starting off the season 1-0, now playing in their new stadium in Las Vegas, Monday Night Football, they're obviously looking to try to get a win to kick off their new stadium in style. It's going to be a very interesting matchup to me. I think this game might be close, especially, again, if Michael Thomas doesn't play. Because, you know, Derek Carr played well last week. And Josh Jacobs was a monster on the ground. If Josh Jacobs could get going again against the Saints defense, watch out. Because I think that's when Oakland's going to... I mean, not Oakland. Sorry. They're not Oakland anymore. Las Vegas can be at their best. And so, if they can get that going, I think the Saints could be in some trouble, but I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go with the Saints to win this game, though. I think they're going to make enough plays regardless of Michael Thomas plays, and I think they're going to go 2-0 in the season, but I definitely think this could be another shootout for both teams. So expect some high point totals in this game. And those are my Week 2 predictions on all of the NFL games coming up on the NFL slate this weekend. Coming up next on the podcast, we're going to talk about more of the Big Ten returning and playing football in October, more on that in the impact of that decision. And then we're also going to get into the Thursday night football game as well. All that right here and more on the podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, I finished up my Week 2 predictions and got through all of my predictions for Week 2 and who I think is going to win and who I think is going to lose. So obviously, if you missed that, you can rewind the podcast, listen to that. Obviously, I think I have some pretty good picks this week. Hopefully, I continue to do well with my picks moving forward. But now we're going to go to the college landscape here, as we have some big news coming on the college football landscape, as the Big Ten football season is scheduled to start October 24th after postponement amid COVID-19. After a unanimous vote, the Big Ten Council of Presidents and Chancellors adopted significant medical protocols, including daily antigen testing, advanced cardiac screening, and advanced data-driven approach when making decisions about practice and competition. And so that led to them unanimously deciding to resume the football season starting the weekend of October 23rd and 24th, 2020. Obviously, the Big Ten was able to get resources that they needed to help bring the season back. We all know about the protests and everything that's happened. Big Ten players were demanding that they bring back the season. Obviously, this is big for them. Obviously, a lot of Big Ten players are very excited about this as they want to be able to compete this year and potentially, if they still will go with a national championship, play for a national championship. Don't forget, we also have the Big 12 starting this weekend and SEC starting very soon, I believe, as well. This is going to be a very interesting season since all these conferences are starting at different points. But, yep, that's pretty much the big news there. Obviously, we want details on how their schedule will play out. Since they were able to come back, they will now be eligible to play for the college football playoff as well. So here's some details on what the Big Ten was going to do. These come from tweets and news. Wisconsin AD Barry Alvarez said the Big Ten will play an 8+1 schedule, 8 regular season games back-to-back, and then championship week will have each school play the team in the opposite division that finish in the same place as them. So the top schools in the East and West will play each other, then the second place teams will play each other, and so on. So that's their schedule, because obviously with COVID-19 and the scheduling, it kind of changes the way the normal schedule will look. You're kind of seeing it here with this type of schedule. Also, the reported plan currently is for Big Ten to be played on campus without fans other than families of players in attendance, although that could change. The Big Ten provided some details on testing and safety protocols, which I'll read and I quote here. The Big Ten will require student athletes, coaches, trainers, and other individuals that are on the field for all practices and games to undergo daily antigen testing. Testing results must be completed and recorded prior to each practice or game. Student athletes who test positively for the coronavirus through a point of contact daily testing would require a chain reaction test to confirm the result of that positive test. All COVID-19 positive student athletes will have to undergo comprehensive cardiac testing to include labs and biomarkers, ECG, and a cardiac MRI. Following cardiac evaluation, student athletes must receive clearance from a cardiologist designed by the university for the primary purpose of cardiac clearance for COVID-19 positive student athletes. The earliest a student athlete can return to game competition is 21 days following a COVID-19 positive diagnosis. In addition to the medical protocols approved, the 14 Big Ten institutions will establish a cardiac registry in an effort to examine the effects on COVID-19 positive students. The registry and the associated data will attempt to answer many unknowns regarding the cardiac manifestations in COVID-19 positive student athletes. So obviously, that was big. Justin Fields obviously led the charge, calling for a petition, which has generated over 300,000 signatures. And like I said, everybody wanted this season to come back. Everybody wanted this to play. And I know, like I said, they're excited to see it. And they're excited to play football. So that leaves only one team or one conference left that has not decided to resume the season. And that is the Pac-12. Obviously, there are questions. Will the Pac-12 resume their season? Are they willing to resume the season? Are they willing to play the season out? We don't know. The Pac-12 actually made a statement saying that right now they're not going to resume the season based off this result. And honestly, there's also some reports that Pac-12 coaches are kind of worried about resuming the season at this point because they're scared of injuries and just bad football. And so they're kind of not even sure if they should resume the season as well. So it'll be interesting to see because Pac-12 is going to be under some pressure if they don't resume the season because they're like, you're telling me 4 other conferences are playing. What are you going to tell your student athletes? Because they're going to wonder why they can't play, but all the other conferences can. Why can't we have the resources and the ability to restart the season, but every other conference can? And I think that's going to be the big thing, I think, moving forward here. So we'll have to see how it all works out and how everything turns out with the Pac-12. But like I said, if you're a Big Ten fan or you just love college football, this is great news for you as you're getting the return of Big Ten football to go with the SEC, ACC, and Big 12 seasons, respectively. But now we're going to get into the Thursday night football game, which is currently going on right now. Currently in the second quarter of the game. Cleveland currently up 14-10, punting back to Cincinnati right now. I know, live coverage. We love to see it. Now, in this game, obviously, we know the stories come into the game. Baker's coming into this game needing a good performance because of the lackluster performance he put on last week. A lot of people have questions about Baker Mayfield and can he be the guy? Obviously, a lot of people view this as Baker Mayfield's make or break season, especially with all the weapons that the Browns have. If he doesn't play well, we'll sit here and say it's not the offense, it's not the weapons, it's Baker Mayfield. So far in this game, he has played very well. And Odell Beckham has caught a touchdown. So that's big if you're a fantasy owner for Odell Beckham. But obviously, some people may say, oh, they're playing the Bengals. That's not impressive. They got to do it against a good team. But hey, any type of positive momentum is good momentum. Obviously, on the other side of this, Joe Burrow, number 1 overall draft pick, coming to come back from his performance last week against the LA Chargers. He's actually played well so far, has made a couple of mistakes, but he's played well so far in the game. To me, this game's going to come down to who's just going to make the most plays. Right now, the Browns are being able to have their way on the ground and through the air right now. But the Bengals were able to get a stop one time in this game. We'll see throughout the rest of the game if they will. You know, but going back to Baker, to me, I think the big thing for Baker Mayfield, moving on forward into the season too, is that he has to figure out what kind of a quarterback he is. And it's up to Kevin Stefanski to say, when is he at his best? What plays work? Because like I said, since they did not have that much time to work together this offseason because of COVID, he's still learning Baker's strengths and what Baker does best. Listen, week 1, you got to throw it down the toilet. They didn't play well. But maybe they were able to see, okay, we did have a little bit of success when this happened. So what if we tried to expand upon it? And that could be what they could incorporate into the offense moving forward to help Baker play better. But Baker also has to make better decisions. Now, he wasn't the turnover machine that he was in last year's week 1 against the Titans. But he just didn't play well in general. Missed a lot of throws, like I said. And so Baker needs to come out. He needs to continue to play well. He needs to find his identity as a quarterback. And then once him and Kevin Stefanski get on the same page about what's best for him, then that's going to maybe lead the Browns to some success and sustained success. Because listen, I believe this football team should be a run-first football team. You have 2 of the better backs in the NFL, in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So that should be where you put the strength of your players. It shouldn't be, okay, we're going to let Baker throw it 40 times. I just think that's not his strength. I don't think you can ask Baker to throw it 40 times and y'all win the game, especially against better teams. You're going to need that running attack. And then, obviously, this offense, they're trying to do a lot more bootlegs and things like that to get Baker moving and mobile outside the pocket. And so I think that's going to be big for Baker, trying to figure out what's best for him so he can be successful moving forward. And obviously, like I said, we talked about potentially could they trade Odell Beckham. I don't think they're going to trade Odell because I believe that, if Baker gets back on track, and let's say Baker plays well, and Odell plays well, then obviously, Odell can be a game-breaking wide receiver. Like that's one thing about Odell Beckham we may have forgotten. Odell can be a game-breaking wide receiver. He can make huge plays in crucial moments. It's not like this guy is a scrub. But at the same time, he has had moments where he struggled. So, we'll have to see what all works out. We have to see what all comes together here. I think that we have to really think about what could be best for Baker Mayfield moving forward. And I think that's what's going on right now on the Cincinnati side of things with Joe Burrow. Obviously, he's new in the league. Zach Taylor's having to figure out, okay, what in this offense works best for him? What puts him in the best position to be successful? And obviously, again, he hasn't gotten any work in with Joe Burrow till training camp. It's not like he has tape. He has tape from college, but this offense is not exactly what he ran at LSU, even though they might incorporate some concepts. So, to me, it's there's going to be questions, and obviously there's going to need to be answers. And I think we're going to have to see if they can come up with those answers in Cincinnati and in Cleveland. Like I said, Joe Burrow played well in his first week. I think he did some good things. I think Joe is going to continue to get better. And like I've said, the Bengals have weapons offensively. If A.J. Green can be what he used to be, they have a number 1. Tyler Boyd is probably one of the better slot receivers in the game. John Ross, trying to be healthy, can be a big play threat. Joe Mixon is a back-to-back 1,000-yard running back. It's just that offensive line is porous. And I think that could be a big X factor in the game against the Browns, because you could say the Browns' strength is on the defensive line. So, it's like I said, it's going to be interesting to kind of see how everything works out and seeing how it all comes together. But I think I will go with the Browns to win this game. More because they need to win this game. And I think Baker's going to rebound and bounce back. And he's going to play well. Because that's desperately what he needs right now for his confidence, for the team's confidence, for the offense's confidence. And I think they're going to be able to get that done tonight. But that's all the time we have here on the GSMC Football Podcast. Thank you for tuning in once again. Thank you for listening to me and letting me be a part of your day. Don't forget to listen to our other amazing podcasts here on the GSMC Podcast Network. Also, don't forget to listen, or don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. We definitely love to hear from you, how I can be a better host, and etc. And so on. But like I said, thank you for tuning in. And this is your host, Brice, signing out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.